infrastructure fund is an investment platform that has been designed to focus on projects that will require blended finance projects. As part of the big strategy of infrastructure developed by Infrastructure South Africa, Office under Public Works and Infrastructure, there are 3 pillars. There are projects that are going to be funded directly from the business. There are projects that are going to be funded, that will be commercially viable. And there are projects that will require blended finance for execution. And the platform that has been developed to do that, the Infrastructure Fund. The Infrastructure Fund will be run by the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Today with me, I have the signatories to the MOA. I have Mr. Dondo Muhajani, the Director General of National Treasury. I have with me Dr. Kosenzu Ramokoba, who's the Head of Infrastructure South Africa, representing Public Works and Infrastructure. And I have with me as well the Chief Executive Officer of the Development Bank of Southern Africa, Mr. Treasury Dlamini. So I will now hand over to Nombulelo, as she will take over, and the signing will then begin. So the signatories can now sign the agreements. Thank you. I'm going to over to you. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you to our signatories. Thank you to our media house in the room today with us. And also thank you to those that are joining us via WebEx today. Please can we ask that if you're in the room, please mute your microphones, number one. And secondly, those who are joining us via WebEx, the journalists joining us via WebEx, please can you put your questions in the Q&A panel so that we may read your questions to the signatories today. We're going to ask the signatories to please come and give their statements. We'll start with the DG of National Treasury, Mr. Dondo.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Dr. Ramokopa, Mr. Treasury Dlamini. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity that you gave me to say a few words about the Infrastructure Fund and this signing ceremony. We all know that infrastructure budgets have been under tremendous pressure over the last few years. We all know that the economy has not been doing well. We all know that tax revenues have not been forthcoming. And as a result, as government, we have to think twice as to what do we do and what do we have to do to ensure that we deliver on this very important area of our spending. We are setting up this infrastructure fund because it's important for us to leverage public resources and the little bit that we have. We want to make sure that we have co-financing arrangements in the private sector to, as I normally say, stretch the rent that's there currently in order for us to be able to be more relevant as government, to be more relevant in ensuring that we're able to deliver on our mandate. You will know that we did say we put 100 billion rand aside for the next 10 years. And as a start in the last financial year, we said in this current NTF, we'll put 10 billion aside. This is so insofar as for us to start this fund. You also know that some time ago we did transfer some 400 million rand or so to the Development Bank of Southern Africa to start with setting up the office and actually get the ball rolling in ensuring that large infrastructure investments are actually kick-started in a way that will ensure that we are able to create the jobs. Now, why the fund? We have been saying that infrastructure, it has got the huge potential of actually boosting the economy and creating the much needed jobs that we need. We will, as Treasury and as government as a whole, continue to support and work closely with the private sector in ensuring that all good projects are funded. Good projects means those that have got the capacity to employ, to create more jobs, those that have got the capacity to make sure that our economy can be boosted from a proactive point of view. So we are committing as National Treasury on behalf of government that all good projects cannot go unfunded. Good projects also mean that feasibility studies will be done properly. Good projects mean that we will also ensure that there are gains that can actually accrue for the South African populace. So, ladies and gentlemen, with these few words, I want to thank you and thank the DBSA for allowing the board of the DBSA in particular to allow this fund to be set up here, because it's important. We want, as the president said, we want to reach that 1 trillion or more in ensuring that we can leverage on the private sector investment opportunities that are there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We look forward to ensuring supporting the infrastructure process, supporting the budget process that actually should ensure that projects are funded adequately from the fiscus possibly, and also from other sources. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I will give over to the program director to proceed with the program for this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DG. I'll call up Dr. Jose Chuamukupa, who is representing Infrastructure South Africa, the CEO, and the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Good morning to DG Mukaza, CEO of the DBSA, Mr. Patrick Lamy, and we greet you all. I think today is a momentous occasion on many accounts. The first one is just a demonstration of the alignment of some of the key players in the infrastructure ecosystem in the public sector. National Treasury, that is the custodian of the national affairs, just making sure that the fiscal framework is aligned and coordinated to support the infrastructure play in the country. The second part is our strategic partner here, the DBSA, the most distinguished and decorated public sector player in the infrastructure space. I think many people don't get to appreciate that the DBSA is part of the totality of the state machinery. And now we're seeing that the alignment of the three players in this instance of the infrastructure space can be central in the delivery of our goals. It is significant also because they represent a momentum that we have built over the past 6 months, working closely with the private sector to generate a credible and robust project pipeline. I think to get to have conversations with the private sector is that, at least in the immediate, our problem is not the money problem, but essentially it's the existence of a robust and credible project pipeline. So we've been working with the private sector, also assisted by the DBSA with the capacity to ensure that we graduate project to the point of financial close. And this culminated in our Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium, which took place on the 23rd of June. So this constitutes a continuation of that effort. So what is that effort? First is to ensure that we stimulate aggregate demand. And on the back of aggregate demand, we'll be able to resuscitate the already decimated supply side of construction industry. I'm sure that you are familiar with the statistics that construction sector has seen 7 consecutive quarters of negative growth. There's hemorrhage drops. So our best chance of ensuring that they were able to repel the kind of hemorrhaging, jobs hemorrhaging that is expected as a result of the pandemic is to invest significantly in infrastructure. I'm sure that you have also encountered and read some of the policy proposals that comes out of the multiple papers organized or penned by private sector, penned by the governing party. All of them are in agreement that infrastructure must be a flywheel that must help us to recover from a very distressed economic situation. So if we're to ensure that infrastructure is grounded and in fact represent the catalyst for the recovery effort, we need to continue to produce a credible project pipeline. And once we have produced that credible pipeline, then you are able to fund it. And as the DG has mentioned, for us to be able to generate that credible project pipeline, there has to be upstream investment in project preparation and packaging. And we hope that we can use the DBSA will achieve that. And once the project gets to financial close, there were 3 pathways of being funded. They can go out to the debt capital market, can use a blended financing mechanism, which essentially is an instrument that is meant to be this project, crowding private sector participation. The state is prepared to take the first loss. And in this way, you're going to advertise the private sector to participate in that space. And the momentum for infrastructure investment continues. On the back of that, you can broaden the manufacturing and industrial base. Then you can be able to absorb the supply side, create jobs, and all other ambitious objectives that we have in our part. So we're excited, elated to be part of this. I don't think that there is room for failure. Like I said, I mean, our association with National Treasury, one of the departments in the country that has distinguished itself over the passage of time. Our association with DBSA, we think that is a formidable partnership that is going to deliver on our stated objectives. So we're looking forward to working together, and we're looking forward to coming back to the public and announcing the next wave of projects that are going to come out of this exercise. So thank you very much, Program Director.
I'll now hand over to our last speaker, who is the CEO of the Development Bank of Southern Africa, Mr. Patrick.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Mufajan, the Director General of National Treasury. Dr. Ramupupa, the CEO of Infrastructure South Africa. Colleagues, members of the media, good morning. I think you will all agree with me if I were to say today is such a momentous occasion. It's an occasion that brings about hope to many people of South Africa. And at the center of it are us in this room. But it's an occasion that is supposed to be picking up the spirit and hope of the people of South Africa, as we've been disappointed in so many ways by all manner of things. I think as we are signing and as we are witnessing the signing of this Memorandum of Agreement between the 3 of us, it's quite important that we do not underestimate the expectations on us and the expectation on this infrastructure fund by the people of South Africa, and also by the private sector in particular. We are an instrument of the state as the Development Bank of Southern Africa, and really we want to make sure that working with our partners here, the National Treasury, the Infrastructure South Africa, under the auspices of the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, and under the leadership of the Minister of Finance, Mr. Tito Mboweni, the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Madam Patricia de Lille. It's quite important that the leadership that they played behind the scenes in making sure that today we are here and we are able to witness this progress. And it's been quite a long time coming. But the good thing is here, the project prep, as DG Muhajana said earlier on, is already underway, and a number of projects already are being actually prepared as we speak. It's going to be quite important that also speed becomes a critical part of this. As you know, that the COVID-19 has decimated our economy, and we know it's a global phenomenon, but we've been hard hit as a country and as an economy. And we know that we have almost 3 million people that are now without jobs. And as we talk about this infrastructure fund, people are saying there comes an opportunity for employment and for economic activities to take place in our country, for us to pick up this economy, as Dr. Ramakupa said earlier on, that it really will serve as a flywheel. It's quite key that fix the infrastructure is extremely important in catalyzing and getting the economy back into functionality, and for it to work and to create jobs and to stimulate many other sectors. But this infrastructure belongs to South Africa. And this infrastructure will require everyone in the public space, especially our sister DFIs, National Treasury, the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure with ISA spearheading it. It's quite important that we make sure that it's also going to be doing work across the country. It's going to be really driving infrastructure across the country. It's going to be driving infrastructure across so many sectors, because it can only begin to fulfill its promise and meet the expectations of the people of South Africa if it is seen across many sectors in the country, and it is seen really to bring about much more needed economic activities in the country. So, as you know, that project preparation is extremely important. A well-prepared, well-structured project is bound to give well-financed projects. So it's extremely important that the skill sets necessary to speedily drive project prep, to speedily structure these projects, will then be able to make sure that we are able to ensure that we catalyze the private sector into this. It's quite important. Let me underscore the importance of the private sector. Because as the public sector, we do not have all the money that is necessary and required to make this infrastructure to happen in the manner that we want it to happen. But if we are able to make sure that we use this risk capital in the form of project prep and make sure that each and every project is investable, I have no doubt in my mind that the private sector players are going to be falling over each other in trying to get involved. This is what we saw when we had the renewable energy IPPs. We saw private sector players from all over the world literally falling over each other to try to get involved. Again, it was a sterling work that was done by government of South Africa, National Treasury being at the forefront, and the Department of Energy. And we were right there actually to serve as the nucleus of the IPP. And today everyone actually is talking and about the IPP, how successful and how well done it was. We now need to start saying, what were the lessons learned from that, and how do we make sure that as we're driving this infrastructure fund, we really see a speed implementation of critical projects that are really going to make sure that we're able to see the significant benefits coming out of it that will be able to drive this economy forward. I'm very excited, and really, once again, I just want to thank my colleagues from National Treasury. I know Edgar Sishi is amongst us, my colleagues from the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. I know Ms. Melissa is also in our midst, and my colleagues from the DBSA. These are the people actually who are doing the work behind the scenes. I know that Mohale Rakhate is here, our CFO, Tumelo Musaka, was also there. Uzodo Mbele was also there, and Paul Kari was also there. Thank you very much, colleagues. And really, I'm hoping that we all understand that now the real job and the real work begins. And we are ready. And I can stand there and assure you that this is one initiative that we want to ensure that it gives pride to each and every South African. Because we want to make sure that we do not compromise it. We want to make sure that we pull all stops to make sure that it happens. And it happens in the manner that reflects transparency, in the manner that reflects responsibility, in the manner that reflects cost effectiveness, in a manner that reflects accountability. Is going to be very, very important. We cannot actually be coming here and lying to each other when actually we are going to be giving things to our buddies and to our friends. We want this infrastructure fund to work for all people of South Africa. We want this infrastructure fund to give a sense of pride to each and every person of South Africa. I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. We have some questions, and I'll just read the first one from Louise. I think it's posed to the whole panel, it's not specific to anyone. What measures are in place to give investors confidence that procurement for the infrastructure program will not be compromised or used as a vehicle for corruption, as has been seen with other interventions to support the economy during the COVID-19 crisis? Panelists, you don't have to stand up to answer. I think you can just answer from where you're sitting. I think there's a button to switch on the microphones. The second question is, it's Ronnie from Construction Management Foundation, and is asking, one, will the fund accept unsolicited proposals from private infrastructure developers? Two, if so, can you please share the details on the mechanism to be applied? Maybe let's start with DG, I don't know, on that first question. Oh, the microphone is on.
Yes, no, thank you very much for the question, Lamis. Measures that should be put in place to ensure that corruption does not take hold of the space that we are creating this morning. It is important to note that, as Mr. Dlamini indicated, South Africans, all of them, both business and individuals, should benefit from the benefits coming through as a result of this fund and as a result of an infrastructure, an enhanced infrastructure rollout that's going to come through. We've got systems in place. We've got mechanisms in place. We've got procurement rules and processes in place, and we will be strengthening them, and we are strengthening them as we speak. It's important that, again, something that we've been saying over and over again, our process should be transparent, should be fair, should be competitive, and we must get the best value for government in this case. So there will be open processes through rollout of this infrastructure fund, including the infrastructure projects. Everyone will be expected to participate openly. So there will be a tender process. There will be an adjudication process that should be overboard. We are not in any way going to accept whether it's the corrupter or the corruptee to come into the space. We will ensure that what we have seen during the construction of the 2010 infrastructure rollout, that does not happen. We've got lessons that we've learned from what we picked up when we rolled out the 2010 World Cup infrastructure in South Africa. So we will be revisiting those processes in ensuring that all processes and systems are above board and they don't in any way particularly advantage any particular company or particular individual. So let me be rest assured that mechanisms and systems are in place. The DBSA is going to be the hub of this. We'll ensure, and they've got governance processes that they must adhere to that are in place, and we expect we will be monitoring from all aspects in terms of our role as a treasury, as custodians of public finance. We'll ensure that we are like eagles and hawks on top of the funds that will be earmarked for this purpose, including funds that will be able to leverage from the private sector, as I said. Thank you.
I'll just repeat it again.
Unsolicited proposals.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think I got that one. I wouldn't actually agree more with the on the corruption and making sure that our procurement is in no way whatsoever compromised. I think it is one thing that we pride ourselves as an institution, and PFA and our constitutional precepts are quite clear in this regard. That we will ensure that this infrastructure fund is not in any way, in any form or shape, compromised, because we want this thing to work for all South Africans. And on this second question on unsolicited proposals, again, even that one, we will have to come up with a very clear process, because sometimes in these unsolicited proposals, they can be a conduit of something actually that actually ends up becoming what you call this thing, unintended consequences. We will have to make sure that even if we were to deal with unsolicited proposals, but it will have to meet all the checks and balances to make sure that it is fair, to make sure that it is transparent, to make sure that there is optimum level of accountability, and to make sure that it is also cost effective. It's very, 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 very important. I think those are the kinds of things that we would have to make sure that they are well publicized, so that if you want to bring in any unsolicited proposal, everyone is clear in terms of which process it will have actually to undergo and follow. It is absolutely important that it should not create any element of doubt in terms of how it is going to be undertaken and how you make sure that each and everyone in South Africa understands this. We want to make sure, colleagues, that this infrastructure fund becomes extremely transparent. We also want to make sure that the systems we put in place, we will ensure that these systems are quite visible out there. And when decisions are made, many of these decisions will have to be quite visible out there, because we need to make sure that there is optimum levels of confidence in us managing this, in our government, and the level of accountability will not in any way compromise. So it is going to be very, very, very important, colleagues, that when people must know that they are going to be dealing with this infrastructure fund, that the process that will have to be followed is going to be extremely strict, but extremely transparent and fair as well, because sometimes we will even have to ensure that not everything will have to come through being unsolicited. It's got to be well justified for it actually to be pursued as unsolicited. But at the same time, we want to make sure that this thing works for everyone in South Africa, and people must be able to see exactly how that decision to go ahead with an unsolicited proposal was arrived at. It's going to be extremely important. I think openness and transparency is going to be the name of the game on this, if we want to ensure that the confidence of our people and the confidence of investors is maintained and achieved.
Just as a small addition is that the fund is just an instrument to allow the project to happen. But I think there are multiple steps, Bishop. And there are multiple steps that happens upstream of just the funding happening. So there's a robust exercise in terms of the discipline of prioritizing and packaging this project. So everything that comes through that channel has to be subjected to that exercise. So the point I'm making is that the candidate project just don't land on our lap and therefore they get to be funded. We have determined in the most transparent fashion, as the C has shared with us, what are the kind of criteria or variables that we are looking for as we get to get projects closer to being funded through this instrument. I thought the mic will pick up. Yeah, my points are still valid.
Okay, I'll ask a series of questions just so that we try to get through them. Question from Sasha Planting. Hi, has funding been allocated from the infrastructure fund to any big projects yet? A question from Ronnie again, just clarity on the roles of each organization as signatories here today. Another question from Sasha Planting. Will funding the 55 bankable projects announced by the President recently be coordinated via the infrastructure fund? Let's take those now.
As I indicated, we have, call it seed capital for now, where we said there's 100 billion over 10 years. We said in this current MTF, there's 10 billion set aside to ensure that we kickstart the process. And this is in a baseline budget that we announced at the beginning of the year. Now, Ron is asking, what is our role? All three of us, and by the way, I must hasten to say on a lighter note, there's not something common among all of us. And I'm not in any way suggesting that you must go to that particular university. We're all from products of the University of Durban. Fortunately, it's not there anymore. So they can't say we're punting for this university. It's now University of KwaZulu-Natal. That's one common thing about us. So without preaching, Proverbs 22 verse 6 says, teach a child when they are young, and when they grow old, they won't forget. We were taught some of the basics when we were still young and small and immature. We didn't forget some of those basics. So this was on a lighter note. Look, we will do our process as part of the process that the Treasury is about. We will fund good projects, as I said. We'll ensure that we facilitate those funding requirements through the budget process. That finally gets signed off by the Ministers' Committee on the Budget, then goes to Parliament, Cabinet, and then finally Parliament. We'll continue doing that. Ronnie will also fund 50% of the costs of the office, with effective from now, in terms of, as part of the infrastructure budget. The running cost will fund at least 50% of that. We'll ensure that the annual contribution goes through to the DBSA. Behind the scenes, there are so many processes that are bureaucratic, but critical for accountability purposes. We'll ensure that that is in place. We'll ensure that what comes through from the infrastructure office and the DBSA then finds itself into the budget process. What do I mean by that? Around this time, every year in June, July of every year, we publish what's called budget guidelines, preparatory budget guidelines for the following year. We'll ensure that the infrastructure engagements and discussions are permeate through the system across. Remember, the infrastructure will be across departments. So the infrastructure office is expected to engage with each government department, package them, and those must come through the infrastructure, through the budget process. And some committee called the Medium-Term Expenditure Committee will have to interact with this and then fund or even support so that they find their way into the budget processes. We'll also ensure that we create an enabling environment for projects for the part. What do I mean by that? We expect some projects, some proposals from the private sector will, on their own, call for some guarantees of some kind. We'll ensure that we facilitate that engagement, because it's only the Minister of Finance who can grant a guarantee if needed by some investors, like as per the IPP program that Mr. Dlamini was talking about earlier on. Bulk of some of our role there was to ensure that we give guarantees where needed and possible. And we'll continue to any other task that is within the mandate as per the Constitution and PFM and FMA that requires us. We will be there as National Treasury to ensure that we smooth the process up so that there are any hiccups whatsoever. And we'll nominate some representatives in various committees that will be set up by this fund, and we'll ensure that we support the fund and the chairperson and CEO of the Investment Infrastructure South Africa in any possible way.
Thank you very much. Just to Sasha, the question relating to the 50 gazetted projects, just to make the point that that's the money that was raised in the capital market. So all of those projects have been funded either through the debt capital market or are funded by the project sponsors, that is the private sector. So the only role that we play in instances where those projects are funded by the private sector, the actual project sponsors, is for us to invest in the bulk infrastructure. So there are three requirements really that they are going to make sure that we get to implement these projects. The first one is around credit enhancing instruments. And as the DG has mentioned, it's about sovereign guarantees, also the increasing of the borrowing limits. And these are projects really that have to do with SANRA and also the water projects that are sitting in the TCTA. So there's a discipline in government so that you don't erode the fiscal framework. As the DG has indicated, we make an application to the Asset and Liability Committee. And ultimately that committee then makes recommendations to the minister in the DG and they'll make that determination. So those projects are shovel ready. When I say shovel ready, I mean they could be implemented tomorrow. So it's just those stages that still needs to be started. And on the housing projects that we have announced, which are in absolute number terms, the bulk of the projects, the 50 there, all we are doing is investment in the bulk infrastructure. So when I talk bulk, I'm talking about the energy and wastewater infrastructure. And typically that is provided for by municipalities. So that's a constitutional obligation of municipalities. We have already have concluded discussions with municipalities in whose jurisdiction these projects are located. So we have agreed on the instrument of the urban settlement development grants, because almost all of these housing projects, at least for the first wave of these projects, are in the metro areas. That's why we talk of the USDG. They were in local, other authorities will be talking about the municipal infrastructure. And in relation to the role of the ISA in this process, as you know that the mechanisms of how the fund will work is that it rests exclusively in the domain of the DBSA. The DBSA will determine the governance framework. We have agreed upfront as the MOA instructs what is the nature of that relation. But part of the principal responsibilities that we have joined in National Treasury is to consider and approve the business plan, the infrastructure fund business plan, which will be originated from the DBSA. So just in that statement, you can see, so there's an obligation on the part of the DBSA to generate the business plan. And that business plan gets to be approved here, and then we give it to National Treasury so that we don't undermine the discipline of the fiscal planning in the country. And the second one that we will be responsible for is determining in part the pipeline of projects that should be candidate for the infrastructure fund. And for that purpose, we'll be putting in place what we call the Infrastructure Investment Committee. This is significant. It's novel in a sense that we are admitting the importance of the private sector to be at the table when we determine what is the mechanism of funding the projects going forward. So the Infrastructure Investment Committee will be constituted by players who are in the private sector and the public sector, so that we are able to bring these brains together so that they enhance the decision making. By the time projects are directed to the DBSA, they are of good quality. And in fact, it's possible for them to be funded through this mechanism. So essentially, those are our principal responsibilities. Like I said, as you submit this project to the Infrastructure Investment Committee, we have assessed them through a criteria that exists in the public sector to ensure that the national sovereign goals are attained or are advanced at every stage of the project, so that when the project gets to hit the ground, we are able to realize them. So don't forget that this is not a fund that is outcome to it. It seeks to resolve intractable, what appears to be the intractable social problems in the country. We're simply using infrastructure and avenue to resolve that problem. The DG had mentioned earlier on that the fiscal metrics has deteriorated. We know the amount of unemployment, it continues to be on the rise. The levels of industrialization or tertiarization of the economy. So for us to industrialize, we need that project pipeline. it must be funded. This is one of the mechanisms. And in that way, we hope to achieve the national sovereign goals. So yes, I mean, essentially, those are our responsibilities about the business plan, about assessing those projects, and also interacting with the infrastructure investment committee, so that we can then take the projects, the other side of the fence, and that's the domain of the DBSA. And they'll use their own governance frameworks, their own skills, the project preparation fund that they have to bring to bear on those projects that are submitted, so that we get to graduate them and they get to be implemented. Thanks.
I think actually all the questions have been well answered by the two previous speakers. I don't think I want to repeat.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask the last few questions. Doc, as you take the question, I'm going to ask that you, they can't use that microphone as we take this last round of questions. Don't stop microphones, we just walk up to them. Okay. Now that DG don't has touched that microphone, you know, okay. So this question is specifically for the DG of National Treasury. And it's from Lindy Donnelly from Business Day, and she's asking 10 billion has been set aside for the fund over the NTF, but has the COVID crisis affected this funding in any way? Will these funds still be provided as outlined? If not, how will this change? More questions from Nolanga, also to you, DG. Is the second tier procurement under the upcoming federal stimulus projects going to be monitored by National Treasury? At DBSA, is the fund already made available for the 10 billion for emerging contractors via an MOU with Sandro? And I'm going to ask one bonus question. I think we should on Twitter. We have one question from Mwana Masi, who's not a journalist at all, but I think this question is important. If people at home want to know. He's asking, are we going to be ticking villages with this 100 billion? In other questions, how will our people benefit? Thanks.
Thank you very much. This, I'm told, lasts for 6 hours, so that's why I was. It's with compliments from the CEO of the DBSA. Now, yes, Edgar is here, he can add. I mean, the 10 billion is there. The 10 billion is there, we didn't touch it. It was very difficult, as you know, to get on and look for the resources for COVID-specific challenges. But we tried as much as we can not to actually erode further the infrastructure budgets, even though it was very difficult to remember. So we did try and secure and safeguard this. So the 10 billion is only is there. What we can only do is that based on, and as I said, no, we are not going to, no good project is going to be left unfunded. And I'm putting a challenge to the two gentlemen on my left, that if it's good and it's got all the right ticks, it will create jobs, it will be, ensure that private sector participants come on board. It ensures that tax revenues, are going to come later on. It will be funded. It will be funded. We made this commitment many, many years ago. And unfortunately, what has been coming through until now, that no proper pipeline of projects were coming through. Now, with the 55 projects and many other projects that I know, Dr. Ramahopa has been working on, the potential is there for us to fund these. So, yeah, it's a start. If it means you have to add more, we will. If it means we have to, the new budget process that has just started now, we'll have to put more money in, throughout. Let's do that. And unfortunately, as we always said, there's always an opportunity to stop projects that has got no value, that shouldn't be there, to actually ensure that we fund those that have got the potential to actually accelerate the productive sectors of the economy. So we'll continue doing that. Our monitoring mechanisms can only be enhanced as we move. The establishment, I mean, if you look at this, when it's going to be made available, you must read this very carefully. It is not normal that in government we do this. You can say, but how can governments sign among themselves? I think we are being creative within the prescripts of law that are really within governing us, whether we look at it from an MFA point of view, PFMA, or in the Constitution, and the responsibilities of each and every department here. Establishing the infrastructure South Africa is unique in its own sense. Still within the government system, you've got that. And we have accepted among ourselves that it's a start. There will be mistakes here and there. We will fix these mistakes as we go along. We should give this process an opportunity to actually unfold in a way that we want. And because I think by doing and holding each other accountable in terms of our roles and responsibilities and the commitments that we put forward will actually put us in a good state as we move forward in ensuring that we roll out the infrastructure needed in the country. So the responsibilities of the National Treasury remain intact in terms of ensuring that we monitor not only the package of measures that the President announced on the 21st of April, but it will also include this. Whenever there's transfers of any cent, we will follow that money through. The AG will follow that money through and will want to know. If you look at this agreement, you'll see that there are certain obligations from the DBSA in terms from a reporting point of view, and also from when the fund, for instance, is wound up in a way that says the fund did not achieve its internal objectives, what should happen? That money should still come back. Unused resources obviously will have to come back. If there's in any way through normal processes from our regulatory public finance regulations, this will apply. The accountability mechanisms and the responsibility of the board and the responsibility of the DBSA are still intact. So we will make sure we will be part of what one of the committees, key committee, will make sure that we've got representatives there in the Infrastructure Fund Strategic Advisory Committee. We will be part of that in ensuring that at any given point in time, the team and I that we work with in the Treasury have got an understanding and full understanding of the rollout of this fund, because I think here's an opportunity, and we want to see what Patrick is talking about. We want to see private sector players rolling on top of each other, making sure that we want to be part of this great initiative. We were known, if you go and read, the IPP program in the world, not only in Africa, in the world, was one of the best projects run from here. And I think here we are starting something. Don't compare this with the Jobs Fund. Don't compare this with any other fund. It's unique in its own way, and we can only leverage on what we have now and move forward. So to all of the colleagues and friends listening, and journalists and analysts, there will be those who say, it's not going to work. But I think give this process a chance. We all know what needs to happen. We all know that young people in townships, destitute as they are, in rural areas, have to see the benefits and fruits of this investment that we're making. It's starting as 100 billion over 10 years or 10 billion over 3 years, as we said. But we can only say we're able to create so many jobs. The president and Spooka, he used to use Spooka, this is Dr. Ramoko confused me sometimes. We are holding the three of us accountable for one project. And if I'm mistaken, it's about paving of what? Of rural roads and townships. Because that's got a potential. And I think if we can achieve that, because that was the original thinking of why the fund. Where are these young people and how do we get hold of them? And actually teach them a skill that at least among many a project that we can deliver on this. There are many projects in the pipeline, and all we can do, ladies and gentlemen, is to ensure that we are good at what we are doing, and we become good at what we should be doing here, in order for that young person in the rural area somewhere to feel the fund and to feel that the fund is benefiting them one way or the other. So that's the intention, and we hope we will achieve that. Thank you.
You can hear me now, yeah. But just to make the point, I want to address the question of the geographic spread of this project. So I'm sure we know that in our country there are multiple manifestations of inequality. One of them that is more pronounced is the in relation to the provision of basic infrastructure. and universal access. So she doesn't have to wait for the funds. Let me share with you some of the features of the 50 projects that will be done. Like I said, there's one that speaks to, is called SA Connect. So its intention is to ensure that we are able to connect the internet connectivity, which is all the schools in the country and all the major public assets, and prioritizing the rural area. So when I say public assets, in addition to the schools, we're talking clinics, we're talking community centers. And we know that if there's one area that has exposed the weaknesses in the country, the COVID, rather, what COVID has exposed is the asymmetries in relation to information access and also internet access. So that's the one. So you don't have to wait for the fund. That is proceeding independent of the fund. Obviously, the next stages, if you like, the next phases of SA Connect is going to draw from the fund. The second one is a provision of what you call bulk water infrastructure. So we know that again, COVID has exposed the following, that it was 6,000 plus schools that are not properly rectified. They don't have waterborne sanitation. So part of the projects that are being funded, which are TCTA sponsored and are sitting in the is that the bulk infrastructure. And from bulk, you are able to reticulate. So you get to the households, you get to the schools. So the priority, again, we know is in the rural areas because those are the active areas. The third set of projects is what the DG is a rural roads project. So we have about 750,000 kilometers of roads in this country. It's in the top 5 of road networks in the entire world. And 80% of that is not paid. When I say paid, people don't want to understand. I didn't ask for it, that's what I mean. But in technical engineering language, you say paid. Because it could be concrete, it could be paid grids, it could be bitumen, it could be all sorts of things. So 80% of those roads are not yet paid. So we're targeting rural roads because we're going to enable you to get to market easier. Farms, as they produce primary production, consumption is happening in the major urban centers. They're able to get there quicker. The running costs are reduced because the wear and tear on their trucks, the fruits or horticulture when it gets to the market doesn't have limitations, and they are able to push it. And the other set of projects, the fourth one is what we call rural bridges. So we know that the far-flung rural areas is more mentioned. Young people and can access schools during rainy days because they have to cross rivers. People can access social services, social grants when it's raining because they have to cross rivers. So we're designing those bridges just to convey, it could be pedestrian and vehicular movements, but for now, the focus is on pedestrian movements because vehicular transporting of vehicular traffic could be a bit more costly, but the priority is to ensure that we have what we call all-weather access. And then there are projects also that have to do with the restoration of municipal infrastructure. So you patch the potholes, you clean the signatories, you cut the grass, you prune the trees, all of that. So these are going to find expression in all the 44 districts in the country plus the 8. So essentially, we are talking about 52 jurisdictions, and in each and every one of those, we'll be employing 1,000. Then there's a sixth project that has to do with what we call digitization of government information. If you visit a hospital, your file is still in the brown file. If you go to the courts, your file is in the brown file. And if you visit the municipal offices, your file is in the brown. So part of the problem that brings to bear is that the government essentially has information, but they can't mine that information because of the manner in which it is stored. So for an example, we are transitioning towards NHI. We don't know how many people present themselves at a particular health facility with what chronic diseases. So we are unable to play. They don't know the amount of medication that is there. So that you are able to play much better, you are able to grow inside. So we'll be employing 10,000 young people across the country for that purpose to help us to digitize. And then from that, government will be able to fund it. So what is the point I'm making? So these 50 projects that have been gazetted, the jobs numbers were looking at is about 700,000. I can say the majority of them are located in the rural areas. So what is the message with regards to blue tick in the rural areas? Is that even ahead of the fund coming into being, the 50 gazetted project, wants to address that manifestation of inequality that I referred to earlier on, the urban rural divide, so that the quest and objective for universal access gets achieved and we give young people in the rural areas the best opportunity to get good quality education, because I think they're excluded, the more affluent, we are able to address the ecosystem. What is the ecosystem? One is internet access. Two is the availability of gadgets, and this can be expensive. And three is the affordability of data. So in the rural areas, parents are faced with this choice from their pension grants. They have to make a determination: do I buy a loaf of bread, or do I buy a data for my children? Assuming that they've got internet access, assuming that they've got an internet and a cell phone. So the choice is obvious. They are going to buy bread for all the siblings. They will not be buying data for just one person to benefit, and that perpetuate the inequality we're talking about. So what is as I conclude, see the fund not as a fund, but see a fund as another avenue of resolving the South African problem. And we'll keep on harping on this message. So it's not just a fund, nicely coined. It's not about infrastructure. It's not about the upgrade, but it's about resolving the South African question. And one of those is that manifestation. Thank you.
Yeah, no, well said and well covered as well. But I think the last thing we want to do is to look at the township and the rural areas as both DG and CEO of ISA have highlighted. I think what is going to be important will be how innovative and creative do we become to make sure that this fund becomes something like never seen before. This fund has got to catalyze nothing less than R1 trillion over the next 10 years. Over the next 10 years. It's going to be quite important, because if we really do our job well, we have to make sure that at least R1 trillion is catalyzed from the private sector to drive this. And also, I think what's going to be important will be a much more enhanced focus on operations and maintenance. We all know that the bulk of our infrastructure has seriously deteriorated because we took our eyes and focus on operations and maintenance. It's asset management 101. That if you want to elongate or to extend the useful life of any asset, you have to look after it. So this is what you would also make sure that as a country, we begin to start ensuring that there is requisite capacity in place. You know, the DTM model is also talking into how we approach things much more different than we've done. And student accommodation is also one of the projects, actually, that is also undergoing project preparation. And again, you have universities, you have TVETs, and they're spread across the country. So that will ensure that we're not blue ticking cities and townships, because these will be right there where these are. And also, you have the SA Connect terrestrial network as well as the satellite network. So the infrastructure has got to be in place for everyone in South Africa at a competitive price. And again, the one-stop border post as well. All these projects are now undergoing through the project preparation phase, which will then come into market very quickly. Again, these projects are spread across the country. It's going to be very, very, very important that our innovation and our creativity and making sure that the infrastructure fund is meant with people who have actually the right skills and who are competent. It's not going to be about my relatives. It's not going to be about Scooter's relatives or Mr. D's relatives. It's going to be about people who are competent. It's going to be about people who are well skilled to make sure that they're able actually to help us deliver on this infrastructure fund. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're reaching the end, but I think there's one last question on YouTube, and I think we'll just give it an audience from Lobang Matsaung. Will the seed funding be funding pre-feasibility studies and feasibility studies? I think you've answered this already, but maybe just for the benefit of Lobang who's asking, and also maybe if there's any closing remarks from our three signatories, we give our closing remarks and then we can call it a day.
Okay, on the project prep, there's going to be almost like a separate funding. And we will definitely be allocating specific project preparation, both ourselves and government in this regard, to drive specific projects, because the 10 billion is primarily there to blend finance. We will also, on top of all these funds, access a lot of concessionary and grant funding from international institutions. Here I'm talking about the Green Climate Fund. There's going to be a lot of funding becoming available from international bodies that will be able to come and blend finance and also to work on the early stage project prep stage, which is the risk capital that actually is so much required. I think what is going to be important as well, that you will see here brown projects, you will see here green projects, you will also see sustainable development, we will see renewable energy being driven here, you will see all manner of projects actually that are talking to the sustainable development of this country and looking at how do we take South Africa and contribute to the low carbon trajectory of the country as we are one of the signatories to the United Nations, and how do we get to drive the ambition of the Paris Accord, to say how do we make sure that as a country we really begin to start doing what actually was not done before. We have a canvas that we want to put what we want on it. So as a country, again, Pareto principles, what are the 20% of the projects that are going to yield 80% impact? That will have to be the name of the game if we want to see a successful infrastructure fund. It's going to be extremely, extremely important. Partnership within the public space, partnership with the private sector, the skill sets within the public sector as well as from the public sector, private sector, will be absolutely critical to make this infrastructure fund to succeed. And our procurement is not going to be up for negotiation. The section 217 of our constitution is very clear to us, and we want to live by that. And I think, if I were to start the closing remarks, we really are, I just want to express my sincere gratitude again to DG, the CEO of Infrastructure South Africa, and the colleagues who really have worked so hard and so much, and our principals, both in terms of the Minister of Finance, Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Mrs. Patricia Dili, our Chairman, Babu Inokodongwan. They really have played a very critical role behind the scenes and in driving us to this point. I just want to say to the people of South Africa that we are here, we want to be held accountable, and we are not going to disappoint you on this one. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I just want to make the point that the fund is part of an ecosystem, so essentially also the success of the fund is predicated on the ability of the state to prosecute its responsibilities. Also a function of the ecosystem has to do with the kind of reforms that are necessary to help us to accelerate the delivery and investment in infrastructure. It has to do to a large extent also with social compacting, like the CSA. It's predicated on private sector participating and also having confidence in the state to discharge its responsibility and to eliminate any form of malfeasance or leakage in this. So it's part of that the totality of the ecosystem. So we're looking forward to a new era, and I'm sure we can be able to demonstrate to the country, the rest of the continent and the world that it can be done. But three players who are key to make sure that we succeed. And thanks to the stewardship of the DG and the team for making this possible. And also we're confident that going forward, working closely with the the CE and his team will be able to demonstrate high levels of state capacity, at least in the infrastructure space, to deliver on complex projects, but also to ensure that there's a geographic spread structure and the footprint of this project are felt throughout the country.
Now, thank you very much. I also want to thank the two of you for assistance in ensuring that this works. Dr. Ramokgopa, you can hear he's soft spoken, he doesn't shout. And he has always been like that. 10 days ago, when he called me, he says, we have been 4 months. The last time we spoke, we agreed. If it was me, I would have said, I spoke to you 4 months ago. But he was simply saying, let's get on with it. Let's sign this thing. Let's get it all the way. And thank you very much, because I think working together really helped in us finding each other, because it's also not easy when you try something as new as this one, in a way that it's not your traditional form of delivering in terms of all that's there. So we are breaking new ground here, and I think that's why I said earlier that we must give each other a chance to get this to work in the way that it should work. But let me speak to those that come to our offices and phone us. They might have called you and say, we've got $1 billion and 10. This is the opportunity. This is the opportunity, because we will support the fund, and we'll support through on lending to deserving infrastructure projects. That we will do. We'll also, through blended financing and co-financing arrangement, that will be supported. It will also be through capital subsidies and interest subsidies and guarantees, as we said earlier. So I think the opportunity is here, that there are many forms of support that government to support this infrastructure fund, to the local investor, to the gentleman who's got $1 trillion in their back pocket somewhere. Because they all come and say, DG, we want to fund South Africa. We've got $100 billion, and $10 billion available today. And then you start asking about some address and and the person said, I'll come and see you, DJ, I'll call you tomorrow. And now, this is opportunity. We have set up an Infrastructure South Africa office. Dr. Ramokgopa is going to help us facilitate that $100 billion, bring it. If you need a guarantee through, as he said, our assets liability management, our fiscal liability committee will sit, interact with the project. If it needs to be guaranteed, we will guarantee. And we will need the money. It must be clean money, because we will double check it. We must be clean money. If you're an investor out there sitting somewhere in London, Dubai, New York, this is it. Come. South Africa is ready for business. All the freeways and the interchange, all the rail network that you see was built in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And there was a big, huge infrastructure rollout in the country at the time. This is it. This opportunity. We're starting now with this. Come. And we are ready to engage with you and to help South Africa move forward. And we have believed, we agree, this 304 billion that we announced of under collection of tax revenues that is impacting on our ability to spend will be a thing of the past if we get this right. Will be a thing of the past if we get it right. And through your support and everyone's support, we can make it happen and make South Africa a worthwhile country to be and an investment destination. So we finally, you are right, Mr. D. We have, the two ministers, including the president, have been on it for a while. They pushed us, and I think today for me is a big day, that this fund finally is up and running. And we can only play our role. We've done our role. Now it's the private sector. It's South Africans who are interested. It's those who've got deep pockets to come forward and partner with government and do what we know we have to do. And we know what we have to do. 55 projects is a start. There are many other projects. Some are on budget. We can engage each other as to what that means and how we can leverage that. Some will come through future budgets. And Edgar is here in the budget office. He'll be more than happy and ready to just give if you come with good projects. That's why we invited him to hear you so that he gives this money. Thanks, Edgar. Thanks for supporting your team. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the media houses in the house today. Thank you to everyone that joined us online via WebEx and watched us stream. This brings us to the end. Can our panelists please remain seated? We just have one last bit to complete, but we are done for the meetings.
Right.